Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. Welcome to part 3 of this year's Project Orchid Series. The set of orchids being the Cattleya types, and we'll be following these over the next 12 months at 3 monthly intervals. So today's video is the benchmark video where we look at them effectively at the start of the growing season. Although in some cases some of these plants are not at the start of their growing season, even though the actual growing season may be started, they're not necessarily at that point. And there's quite a bit of variety in amongst the Cattleyas that I've chosen, including little ones, big ones, non-bloomers, a bit of an assortment. So let's get going with the Cattleya types. Okay, the first one is a relatively recent acquisition. This was got at the Welsh Orchid Festival last year. That was September time, so I haven't had it all that long. It was in bloom when I got it. Took it out of its pot after it finished blooming and mounted it, as that's how I want to grow it, even though it wasn't the best time of year to actually do that. And at the time we didn't have new roots growing, which for me is a bit exceptional. It's a bit of a risk with Cattleya types. Nonetheless, what we've got here is what it came with. -1 growth. One of the tiny little new growths on it actually failed. But what it has done is pushed out the growth to the right, which is that one there, which is not... It doesn't look to me as though it's going to swell up to the same size as the previous ones, but it has got 2 leaves. Now in the main, this can't make its mind up, because some of the mature bulbs have got a single leaf. Some of the older ones have 2 leaves. So I'm not sure it's quite made its mind up whether it's a bifoliate or not yet. We shall see what the next set of new growths bring. Now this one, all the little new roots that you can see have grown in the last month or so. It's coming back into growth, and these little new roots are pushing out in all sorts of places. Not necessarily where expected, but roots are roots. We'll have them wherever they come out, and there's quite a few. But they're rambling around all over the place. What I need from this, obviously, is some new growths. Now, I don't think this little growth out to the right here with the 2 leaves is going to bloom. So I need some more. So the progress on this plant that I'm hoping for is new growths that will grow big and strong, because they'll be doing it in the growing season, where I've got the temperatures and everything. Now, it's an unusual one, this one. I'm going with its name as registered, which is Laelonia, Joyce Hamilton. Was it Hamilton? Where's my list? Hylton, sorry, Joyce Hylton. Now it can only be called that if the cross between the 2 species, the Laelia and the Brautonia, were done a certain way round. If this set of plants was produced with the same parents but the cross was the other way round, then it can't use that registered name. But I'm going along the lines, if you're going to produce a cross using the same parents, why would you put them round the other way round and have all the bother of having either an unnamed cross or having to register it yourself with a new name, when if you just do it the way it was done before, you get to reuse the name. So I'm running with that name until proven otherwise, basically. But yes, an unusual cross, Laelia cross with a Brautonia. There aren't many Brautonias, there's only a few species, but they are introduced into hybrids quite frequently, those that there are, but there aren't many. So that's that one. Progress, hopefully, will be new growths followed by more new roots soon. Right, next one's a bit of a giant, and a notorious non-bloomer, but I think I've solved that now. This is Laelia purpurata, and it's the variety atropurpurea. With that amount of purple in the name, one would expect to see a bit of purple in the blooms possibly, but first job is to get the aforementioned blooms. Now this has grown 4 new growths since I got it. Again, this was a purchase at Malvern a few years back off of Equigenera. So its season was back to front for a start. If it had come from the southern hemisphere and brought into the northern hemisphere, I think that's what's been my problem with it, is it's had to try and adapt to the northern hemisphere so that the canes mature and do their stuff at the right time of year, which it hasn't been doing. So all 4 new growths, 2 at a time, it grows in 2 directions, have always produced good bulbs. They've always produced a good leaf, but what they've never done is produced the sheath. And without the sheath, these bulbs will not bloom. It's their style. And it is very important that the sheath is formed at the right sort of time. And they're big. Both of my new growths now have a sheath. So this is the closest I've ever got to getting this to bloom. But it was never going to bloom without this bit. Now at least I've got the sheath, so if it doesn't bloom this time, I'll be very surprised. But all I can do is patiently wait. I've got to be very careful, because the theory is behind these plants, is that when the bulb matures with its sheath, it should have a bit of a rest, yeah? Well, it's difficult to tell when the bulb is fully mature. I'm confident that the leaves on my growths are not going to grow anymore. I think they're as large as they're going to get. What I'm going to do now, well, not now on camera, but I'm actually going to measure the length of the sheath to see if that is still growing. I want to see if there's any growth left in these 2 latest leads, and if there is no growth going on whatsoever either in the leaf, the length of the bulb or the sheath, then I'm going to ease right off with the watering and feeding. And it's only for a few weeks. It's not like a winter rest for a dendrobium or something or other. It's just apparently just letting them ease off a bit and easing off with the food and the water at the appropriate maturity point triggers the buds to form inside the sheath. So we'll see what we can do. But the goal with this is to get it to bloom. I'm absolutely confident it's going to produce 2 new growths and carry on growing as it always has done. But hopefully this time round the latest 2 growths will actually bloom. It should be good if it does. I'll be over the moon. I've been wondering why this would not perform when it grew well. You see what I mean? Good sized bulbs, good leaves, it's a good plant, always produced loads of new roots each year, and yet it just didn't bloom. So maybe it just wasn't mature enough and or out of season. Yeah, so we'll see what we can do with these 2 growths. The next one up, which is a bit of a tatty object, is my Iwanagara apple blossom, my version of this plant. There are so many named varieties around of this plant now, and in my humble opinion, none of them match the original. They're starting to change colours and play around with things, and for me they don't look as good as the first one that ever there was, if you know what I mean. Its name's changed now, but not for me, can't be bothered. This one got caught in the sun over this side a while back now, and waxed the leaves, so this end of the plant doesn't look so good. But it only grows in one direction for me. It's a linear pseudo bulb, so this is the front end, and certainly this bulb was an absolute cracker. Lovely big fat swollen bulb, produced a nice spike, and the latest bulb here has a spike showing now, so this one will be in bloom down the line a bit. It's difficult to say how many blooms they're going to be, but there's going to be at least 3, probably 4. I doubt if there'll be any more than 4. This plant, as an experiment, because of the older part of the plant is getting pretty bad now, I may actually cut the rhizome and see if I can get it to shoot out farther back. But quite honestly, I don't want this bit of the plant. This old tatty bit I'd rather just take off. Yeah, if you see what I mean. And if I cut the rhizome and this part of the plant shoots out, I'm sort of obliged to keep it, aren't I? I'd rather just take it off and have that as the remaining plant and let that grow on. I'll still have 4 mature bulbs, all of which have bloomed, so it should carry on its progress, and just remove this tatty bit at the back, which serves no purpose. But what I might do with it is actually plant it on the grounds that an awful lot of people have tried to get hold of this and failed. So having something growing on, even though, you know, the older part of it would be pretty bad, but the new part, if it could produce a new growth, at least it's a plant to grow on. I may bother with this one because they've become difficult to get hold of. God, they were common as muck once. Now you've got a job to get them. So that's that one. The next one's an Epidendrum species that I'm going to pronounce lanipes, because that's what it looks like to me. Now this was a raffle prize back at the Christmas Do, Wessex Orchid Society Christmas Do, but it originally came from Milan, who's a member at the Wessex Orchid Society, and actually posts quite frequently on our Facebook group. So some of you may know him from there. But yeah, he put quite a few plants in the raffle actually, and I got this one. I know nothing about it. I haven't got a clue what it's going to do, or even what it's supposed to do. And for this plant, I'm happy in my ignorance. Because, you know, if it's a cool grower, well, I can, you know, I've only got one place to grow my orchids in. If it's a warm grower, same logic, I've only got one place to grow them in, so it's going to get what it's given effectively. What it has done recently is started growing some new roots from parts of the plant. You can see it's a division. Yes, it was cut off here, and I decided to mount it. Most of this is live moss, and we do have some new roots, but what we haven't got is any signs of new growth yet, but it's early in the season. I did look this up on the internet not long after I got it to see what the blooms were like. They look quite nice. Whether I can get any in the next 12 months on this actual plant or not, who knows? We will have to wait and see. We've got a damaged cane there that needs trimming off. And there, come to think of it. But anyway, let's see what we can do with it. As I said, sometimes it's just nice not to know about a plant and just see what it does. Let the plant tell me what it wants. You know, if the roots start to rot, it's too wet. You know, things like that. We'll see what we can do with it. A little bit of an unusual one, that one. Now this is my Encyclia cordigera, and this got brought back from the brink, and I really mean it. It rotted, lost all its roots, had lots of rotten pseudo bulbs due to my mistreatment effectively. It was just kept wet when it shouldn't have been. It should have been a fast wet dry cycle. And on top of that, this particular species really doesn't like soggy roots. It objects severely. We managed to bring it back from the brink, put it in a holy clay pot, with some large bark, and it promptly produced a lot of roots and started to mature the next set of growths. At the moment I'm a trifle worried about it. I had to, I'll show you, you see that stump there with the cinnamon on, I had a bulb rotted that I had to do emergency surgery on, which I did, and then I had another 2 down here, one of which was buried. It was a very old bulb, so taking it off didn't worry me. But what's happening now is this particular bulb here is coming into bloom. Well, that is no good reason to have your leaves turn yellow on the bulb you're actually blooming on. That's not right. That is a worry. Now, some other leaves going yellow I'm not particularly worried about, because some of the leaves on this plant are very old. This one in the centre, that's one of its original bulbs from when I bought the plant. So if that one goes, I don't mind. I mean, that bloomed quite a few years ago, that bulb. But this one's a worry. Now, the one over this side, that's also going to bloom soon, is not turning yellow. Yeah, so that's just a little worry at the moment. What I'm expecting from this is, first of all, some blooms, which we haven't had on this plant for a long time because it was virtually lost. What's happened is I started with 4 spikes, 2 spikes aborted. So again, the whole plant is still not happy, but getting better. This bloom spike over here aborted a bud and dropped it. It's got 2 left that looks like they're going to go on and open, and this one's got 3. This also dropped a bud. So this should have been 4, it's down to 3. So the plant overall is still not 100%. So we got a little bit of a worry here, and we have another little worry in here, because this bulb here is starting to rot. And that's another one of the very, very old bulbs. Now that can't be due to being wet, can it? It's sitting on top of the plant. But it's not happy, it's dead solid, it's not soggy or anything like that, so there's no panic there. But this bulb looks like this one did that I had to take off before it went bad. So I think I need to take that one off as well. And I presume that after this plant has bloomed, it should be in bloom quite soon now. After it's bloomed, I don't know how long the blooms are going to last, I would suspect it's going to come back into growth, because it hasn't actually been growing now for some time. The few bulbs that have matured did that quite a long time ago. It hasn't pushed up any new roots or new growths since that period. So nothing new has grown on this plant for a while. So the idea is to get the blooms over and done with. We'll enjoy those while we've got them. I'm going to leave these leaves, but they're probably going to fall off on their own. And I am going to take that bulb off. There's no rush for this, whereas with the other one there was. There's no rush on that, it's still a solid bulb. But it's discolouring from the top, and the brown is slowly moving downwards. It's very slow. Quite honestly, the tip of that bulb's been brown for some time now. So yeah, a little bit of surgery to do on this one, and a bit of a worry going on. As I say, it's still not right, still not happy, still not flourishing, but it's certainly not anywhere near as bad as it once was. So all we've got to do is remove what is a worry, get the blooms over, and get it back into growth, and get some new roots and some new growths. And if it'll do that, I'm sure it will pull on. The last one is one of my more compact Cattleyas, as opposed to some of the giants. And this has bloomed several times for me before. And while it's in bloom, it turns out to be quite a few people's favourites. It has a delicate coloration on it that's just enjoyable. They're not huge blooms, there's not loads of them, but as a plant it's got 2 directions of growth. So that was the previous one that bloomed. That is the latest growth with the buds on, so it's going to be in bloom again soon. And then over the other side of the plant we've got this one here that's previously bloomed, and it's already producing a new growth on this side, which is about to start producing some roots as well. The root system on this annually gets old looking and tired, and then replenishes itself from the area where the new growths are, like here. So lots of new roots are going to come out here over the top of these older, tireder ones, but these are still functional. A bit dry at the moment, but that's my watering. We're not into that period where my watering frequency comes right up to its summer. Are you alive? Yeah, oh, it's alright, it's just a tiny little spider. I don't want to lose him. You can go back on there. There's your tiny. Well, you can choose to or not. Please yourself. I think it went back in there somewhere. But yeah, so this one gets a very old, tired look to it, and then all the new stuff comes out over the top, which it's done on several years, you know, and then grows down and sits in the tray. So when I water this, I actually make sure there's a, you know, about ½ a centimetre of water in the tray, which it then soaks up into these external roots. Also keeps the pot hydrated, because obviously it's a clay pot. So we've got this one to come. As I say, it's got Cattleya little lemon drops in it, which I've also got in another cross, which is also a very enjoyable little Cattleya, nice compact one. That one's mounted, and this one's crossed with Cattleytonia. Why not? And I'm sure you all heard the story before, but for those who haven't, apparently the guy was going round the nursery looking for suitable Cattleyas at an appropriate point of blooming to choose pairs to hybridize. And he found a little Cattleya with some blooms on at the right sort of stage, and he called out to the owner and said, "Is it all right if I use this one in a hybrid?" And the guy said, "Why not?" And apparently that's a true story, and that's how the original Cattleytonia was called "Why Not?" because that's what the guy got told. So yeah, maybe not. Bit tongue-in-cheek possibly. Anyway, that's the last one, so that's the 6 of the Cattleya types that we'll follow through for the next year. And yeah, I hope you're enjoying the project plants. There's one more part to go to benchmark, which I'll get done quite soon, and then, as I said, we'll run our first set of updates after 3 months, where we'll go back and do part 1, 2, 3, 4 again, same plants, same order, and look at them how they are then, talk about how they progressed, and compare them back to how they are now. So that'll be our first comparison one, which is where it starts getting fiddly for me. These are easy. But once I have to compare back, I have to get the pictures out that I store away from now, as they are now. But it works okay, people seem to enjoy it, so I don't mind doing it. So that's the Cattleya types then. See you next time.